This is the way. It's a good weekend to be a Star Wars fan. How you doing? I'm Stephen Lewis, radio for years, podcasting a little bit. Follow at Stephen on the Air on all the usual social places. But it's definitely a good weekend for Star Wars. Celebration is happening in London all weekend long, and they've dropped quite a bit of stuff going forward. Stuff that's going to affect Disney Plus, stuff that's going to affect your cinemas, and where the whole thing ends up years and years from now. They also dropped a new Indiana Jones trailer, which I'm really looking forward to. I probably don't hate Crystal Skull as much as a lot of people do, but I think from what I can tell, this is going to look like a very fitting way for Harrison Ford to close the Indiana Jones chapter, and I'm excited about it. But Star Wars is where we're going this weekend. And they kind of released a new timeline for where things are supposed to fall, so you can kind of figure it out. But the big thing that's so far that you might have already seen, Ahsoka is finally going to premiere on Disney Plus in August. A little bit of background on her. She came out as a character in Clone Wars that ironically nobody liked when she first showed up. She was Anakin Skywalker's apprentice in the animated Clone Wars movie, which led to the Clone Wars series. But by the end of Clone Wars, she's definitely a fan favorite, voiced by Ashley Eckstein. But she made her live-action debut, played by Rosario Dawson, in Mandalorian Season 2. She was someone that he took Baby Yoda, a.k.a. Grogu, to kind of return to the Jedi. Only problem is Ahsoka's not a Jedi. She walked away from all that. See Clone Wars for more in-depth discussion. But that was leading to what was going to be the Ahsoka series. Now, she appeared in Rebels, which was another animated Star Wars series, and in the end of it, her and one of the other Rebels characters went off to search for Ezra Bridger, who was one of the characters on Rebels as well. But this Ahsoka trailer looks really good.
Something's coming. Something dark. I sense it.
This is a new beginning. For some, war. For others, power.
It's been a while. Things have changed. I started hearing whispers about Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire. We have to prepare for the worst. The Jedi fell a long time ago. There aren't many left.
Perhaps it is time to begin again.
The plan is to introduce the live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn, played by Lars Mikkelsen, and he's the guy who did the voice in the animated appearances thus far. Now, they kind of took Thrawn out of play. Thrawn was a character in the previous Star Wars Legends stuff. Now, this is all the stuff that happened before Disney bought Star Wars. Thrawn was a character in a phenomenal set of books called the Heir to the Empire trilogy, written by Timothy Zahn. I read these when I was in college, and a lot of people always said that these three books were the true chapter 7, 8, and 9 of the series, and it's a better continuation of what Han and Luke and Leia were doing at the time. They introduced some really cool characters, including Luke Skywalker's wife, Mara Jade. I recommend the reading because for people who wanted to see Luke Skywalker in his heyday, these all take place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So it takes place in the Mandalorian timeline. Mando is about 5 years removed from Return of the Jedi. And Luke Skywalker is the baddest man in the galaxy. Like, he is so strong in the Force. But these books introduced a lot of things, and Lucas approved all of these novels. George Lucas did. And they get some really cool stuff. You see cloning come into play because one of Thrawn's allies, so to speak, is an insane clone Jedi Master. They also introduced the concept of the Issa Lamiri, which are these creatures who kind of dampen out the Force. And Thrawn always wore one over his shoulder, which kind of kept Force users at bay a little bit. And Thrawn's just an interesting character in general, so I'm really excited to see him in live action. And Ahsoka name drops Heir to the Empire, so I'm wondering if they're going to do their version, which maybe they will introduce Mara Jade at some point in time, and some of the other cool characters. There's a Han Solo had like a counterpart in this called Talon Card, who was kind of like the head of the smugglers and whatnot. Just a great set of books and a great continuation of Star Wars before we got all the Disney Plus stuff and before Disney ruined it. I still kind of wonder if maybe we will get a live-action Luke Skywalker. Dave Filoni, who's the guy who is responsible for Clone Wars, and he and Jon Favreau are the ones responsible for The Mandalorian. I saw some comments when they said that Dave was directing this, that, oh, it's going to be all Clone Wars because that's all he knows. Nah, dude is George Lucas Jr. Dave Filoni is the guy you want in charge of Star Wars with Jon Favreau. But they're going to introduce this movie, so I'm hoping we get another live-action Luke Skywalker, whether it's Mark Hamill portraying it and then they de-age him and use another stand-in, or you do what a lot of fans want, just cast Sebastian Stan as a younger Luke Skywalker and be done with it. But what I think they're doing is all of this stuff that's going on in Mandalorian and with the new movie is to kind of make the Disney sequel series better. You're getting a better version of Luke Skywalker here than you did in that god-awful trilogy that started off on a good note and then kind of ended on the worst note possible. But more about that coming up. The other thing that I find interesting, there are some rumors right now that there's a lot of headbutting going on between Filoni and Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy, who's the president of Lucasfilm. Now, the rumor is as soon as Indiana Jones is done with its movie in theaters, she's going to step away, which is probably a good thing. But supposedly, when I was talking about Mandalorian, they wanted Grogu, Baby Yoda, and Mandalorian to be a little bit further apart to kind of build to their reunion a little better. They didn't want them to reunite on the Book of Boba Fett, but Kathleen Kennedy did, and they wanted Grogu back on the show. And I said this a while ago, money makes the world go round, and Baby Yoda merchandise sells like it's going out of style, and they're making a ton of money, and I think there was a little bit of, hey, we're going to get this guy back on this show just for the merchandise sales alone, which might not have been the right call. Time will tell on that, but we are getting a Mandalorian movie that will kind of wrap up everything going on Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and all this other stuff that's kind of happened in that timeline. It doesn't mean the shows are going to end. It just means that this story's so big, they need the movie to tell it, which could be interesting, could be kind of cool. But the downside of that is, if you're not watching Disney Plus, you might be lost when the movie comes to theaters. But that's not all we got with a Star Wars Celebration. We got The Acolyte, which is a new movie. This is set way before the first Star Wars and the prequels and everything else. I did some interviews with the cast. It looks kind of interesting to see where they go with that. We also got a little bit of a glimpse of Skeleton Crew. This is set in the same time as Mandalorian, and it's a bunch of kids and Jude Law, who's going to play a Jedi. I'm kind of curious to see where they're going with this. We don't know who he's going to play yet because it's still a little bit under wraps, so we're getting that. We're also getting Andor Season 2, which a lot of people dug Andor. I'm excited about that to see where it's going, and they're only wrapping that up after 3 seasons, so no matter what, Andor only goes for 3 seasons. And then they're also getting from James Mangold, the guy who's directing Indiana Jones. He is going to direct the Star Wars Rise of the Jedi Order, which is going to be way back before the first Star Wars, before the prequels, kind of telling the origin of the Force. And he's saying it's going to be somewhere along the lines of like a biblical epic. I like James Mangold. He's doing Indiana Jones. He's the guy who directed Logan, which is one of my all-time favorite comic book movies in the world, so I'm excited to see what he does with this. But the kind of the one sour note that has been going on with Star Wars Celebration this weekend, they're going to do a new movie called New Jedi Order, and it is 15 years after Rise of Skywalker, so we're kind of getting a sequel to the sequel trilogy that nobody really liked, starring Daisy Ridley is Rey. And I like Daisy Ridley. I don't have anything against Daisy Ridley as an actress. I just don't know why you go this route. I mean, the good side, maybe we're going to get Mark Hamill back as a ghost Luke Skywalker that still appears to her and helps her out a little bit. I just never really got into the character of Rey. And I did in the first one, Force Awakens, but every movie after that had me less and less enthralled in what Rey was doing. And I didn't like the whole, oh, she's the Emperor's granddaughter. I wasn't a fan of any of that. There was a rumor floating around originally that the first Force Awakens was supposed to open with Luke Skywalker's hand holding the lightsaber, like his floating around in space, kind of decayed and whatnot. And supposedly Rey was going to be a clone of a bunch of different people. She was going to be a clone of Luke, a clone of Obi-Wan, and a clone of, whoever else touched that lightsaber, probably Anakin, which I liked better because it would have explained a lot easier why she was all of a sudden so good at using the Force or whatnot. But again, nothing against Daisy Ridley. That's the one part of this that I'm definitely not necessarily super excited about, but I did like the rest. I am looking forward to see what they do with Heir to the Empire. I hope it sticks close to the Zahn novels, because they don't need much altering, in my humble opinion. But needless to say, that is what's happening over the weekend. If you are a Star Wars fan, it was a good weekend. This is the way, so enjoy the rest of your weekend, whether you're doing Easter things or not. May the Force be with you, and spend some time with family and those you love, because time is limited, so get out of here.